Hello and welcome to day 2 of Champions Spring here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Monte Cristo. Joining me today is Papa Smithy as we get into a very exciting first match because it is the debut of the new Longzhu Gaming roster.
No longer incredible miracle, but man, did they have quite a miracle in terms of roster overturn in that offseason. Going from where they were right at the bottom of the standings in relegation once again, year on year, to what? Maybe one of the favorites for this split.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big question coming in tonight because how much has this team gelled? Do they have the synergy? We know on paper they have a very strong roster. Interestingly, we are not going to see Flame starting tonight. It will be Expression, which is a bit of a surprise.
Absolutely. I mean, Flame comes in with, a wealth of history. He had a decent year out in LGD. Of course, didn't play all the games, but when he played, I mean, even the most recent time we saw him play in the back end of LGD's Worlds, he was certainly not the source of their struggles, but not going to be at least starting out tonight. It's a best of 3. They could sub him in, but all you Flame fans going to have to wait a little bit longer to see him back in the OGN booth.
Yeah, that's right. And let's take a look at our league here on OGN. Again, about 300 million Korean won in total in the prize pool, so about $300,000. And it is a double round robin best of 3 between the 10 teams here in Champions. And we do have that gauntlet style of playoff, which is relevant considering how many best of 3s, how many games each team plays during the regular season. You really want to reward a high placing.
Seeing the teams on the screen, you would of course know best how many games are played. You cast all of them last season, but notably, this caster pairing of yourself and me, that's awkward to say, is on a short lifetime. We will have some extra reinforcements in a couple of weeks.
That's right. We have been doing the double color cast, but that will be ending sadly soon as we get our new caster Achilleos here to do some play-by-play.
Are you saying Champion's going to lose some color, Monte Cristo?
Well, it will necessarily. It's okay. There'll still be color, just not double color. There are matches for today. Longzhu Gaming goes up against Jin Air Green Wings, who will be running Trace in the top lane. We saw Sowon last at IEM San Jose, but a little bit of a mix-up for the first day of Champions. And then Samsung versus EM Fire, no longer Najin. And Samsung seems like they may be on an upward trajectory with some very high solo queue players that have arisen in at least those solo queue ranks in the offseason.
Juve in particular has always been an excellent solo queue player, but never quite taken it to the next step like, of course, Smeb did so notably last year for KOO, now the Rocks Tigers.
Well, we'll see them a little bit later, but first off, it will be Longzhu Gaming. Name does mean Dragon Balls.
A 10-man roster, and then, of course, one of the Blaze old boys in Lust Boy in the support staff. So a lot of League of Legends players on this squad.
That's right, and for our starting lineup today, it will be Expression, Chaser, Coco, and Captain Jack, with Pure at support. So, of course, Fury is banned from competitive play for the next month, and we are not going to see Flame at least in Game 1. So, a bit interesting, the roster that they are going to be debuting, not what everyone thought they'd be coming out of the gate with.
And we're all excited to see what does the top side of the map look like when it is Flame, Chaser, Coco, 3 carry-minded players. Expression can play carry champs. I expect them to move more into the tanks, be more of the passive laner, the farm laner in this scenario. Worth noting, of course, as well, Chaser against his old team, against Jeanette.
That's right. So perhaps a bit of revenge here. Some history between these two organizations, and there is Expression, long famed for his split-pushing ways, perhaps to the point of disaster, some might say at times. He has been successful, just not so recently. On the other side of the arena will be the Jin Air Green Wings coming in tonight, and we have Winged, the man who replaced Chaser towards the end of the season, and Jin Air, fresh off their defeat at IEM San Jose, the very first loss in League of Legends history in a best of 3 or a best of 5 for a Korean team to a North American team in CLG.
You'll notice, of course, that Trace is the starting top laner. Sowon, who did play at IEM, who did play in the Klespa Cup, won't be at least starting in Game 1. It means they have a bit more experience in the top side. Trace, the oldest players, I believe, actively playing in Champions. Kuzan, of course, he's got the big shoes to fill. No longer GBM on this lineup, now over in the NALCS on NRG. Kuzan, look, when we saw him, it looked like he could take strides to be a good mid laner in Champions, but he still has to show it over the course of a long season like Champions Spring.
That's right, and Pilot there, you can see with the cheerful in front of him with that Ezreal, and you and I were talking, Papa, and this is a great meta for Pilot.
It does feel like spellcasting AD carries, which is what Pilot is known for are in the meta. We were talking to GBM during the offseason, and he said this would be the season for Pilot to take that step up. He was very young last season. He had to get used to the expectations of being the starting AD for Jin Air. And now this season it's all about taking that next step to being one of the top ADs in Korea.
That's right, and going up against Captain Jack, the man he split a lot of time with.
That's
so
true.
Two of these former Jin Air players now facing their former roster. So they have replaced Soan, that rookie player, with someone a little bit more stable in Trace. We may see, interestingly enough, a very strong emphasis on Graves in this series, simply because Chaser has been spamming Graves in the jungle. And weirdly enough, Trace has been playing a lot of Graves in solo queue in top lane with teleport.
It is crazy to think that Trace, a player where, you know, a new champion comes into the meta, if it's carry, like, that's not a Trace champion. That's why when Malphite was coming, like, that sounds like exactly a Trace champion. Graves top will be tanky, but it's still a carry-orientated top laner. And if it's something that Trace can add to his game to complement his excellent low econ style, that's a big boon for Jin Air.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be the first time we've seen Trace innovate in that top lane. Famously, the top lane Morgana he was playing last year kind of echoed around the world. We saw a lot of imitators. He doesn't have a big champion pool, but when he finds something that he debuts, it typically does quite well. So I'm very intrigued to see how he can make it work, and if we are actually going to see that pick, or whether we're just going to see that banned. Of course, Chaser, you have to worry about his Nidalee, as always. Big-time carry jungler. It's a great meta for Chaser, with picks like Graves, Nidalee, and Kindred being a very high priority.
See the bans come through. Trundle starts things off, which makes sense. I was surprised to see Trundle fall through picks and bans a couple of times yesterday. That ability to just take away flat armor and flat magic resist, specifically the flat armor, that moving Last Whisper that it can sometimes turn into between the Last Whisper and the Trundle pillar, makes him very powerful.
It does. So bans coming through quickly. Lissandra and Ryze. Trace, of course, playing a lot of Lissandra in solo queue as well, and generally just a very strong pick. Kuzan also, in one of his games where he took over from GBM last year, had a very powerful Lissandra even when it was off meta, so a good flex pick for sure for Jin Air. And that is not going to be allowed, at least in game number 1, by Longzhu. Lots of thought here in the last ban of this series. Of course, we are on 524, so it will be the Gangplank. That leaves MF up, however. And that may be the first pick. We saw this from SK Telecom yesterday, just first picking Miss Fortune on the blue side.
Miss Fortune, the thing you think about is, okay, she puts out a lot of damage, specifically her laning trades are very powerful, but she controls a lot of space. That's why when I was watching at home, just watching the space control of the ultimate, you can have a hyper carry, just, you know, sitting like a hyper carry mid laner, just sitting in the middle of the friendly bullet time and putting out damage, and no one can ever come and close the distance, just because you have to respect the zones of both the Make It Rain and the bullet time.
Yeah, very true, and before she gets some of those nerfs that come through in 6-1, she is going to be that high priority selection, but without the Trundle, we'll have a little bit less zone control than we saw when SK Telecom ran it, and the Lulu gets through, and Lulu Alistar are providing a lot of tankiness for Jin Air early.
Alistar is also one of the few champions that can put on that ultimate and then just interrupt bullet time. He is unique as a champion with all his damage reduction on his ultimate to act as an interrupter. Just looking at the champions that have made it through this draft, a third round of Tahm Kench. Now, Tahm Kench top was actually played to an excellent degree by Duke yesterday, so no guarantee it's a support pick. But there is that flex pick nature of Tahm Kench, at least on the current patch.
From what I've seen so far, Tahm Kench is not really a champion that's going to be picked as a support at these days. It's almost exclusively played in the top lane. He's so tanky, he's so brutal. And Mundo would be a throwback for Trace, a champion we thought we'd see a lot more at the start of this season, but consistently fell through picks and bans despite his very big power as a major tank and the power of these tanks in general.
And the Tristana that's being mulled over, it's not one of those spellcasting ADs, of course does have a decent spell rotation in lane, but with Lulu picked up, maybe you're a bit more flexible to go more for those auto-attack AD carries, just because you know you're not going to have a super tank in Mundo to deal with. Of course, Tahm Kench is going to eat up a whole lot of damage, but your positioning can be a bit more aggressive when you have a Lulu to beef you up.
That's right. Well, no Corki yet in the mid lane. You have to assume that Longzhu is going to be going for another AD carry with this Tahm Kench pick, because you have the versatility in who you save in that particular scenario. So picking up a Graves in the jungle or a mid lane Corki here might be ideal for Longzhu.
Well, with Rek'Sai locked in, probably means the Graves is off the board, at least for this game. We were excited to see whether it was the Nidalee, whether it was the Graves, more of a carry-style return to Chase's game. That's when he was looking his best. You know, with Jin Air's passive lanes, GBM and Trace last season, it was all about Chaser going off on a carry jungler, but not for game one. You are confirming your suspicions. It looks like a support will be taken, and it could certainly be Poppy, who now is also developing into a flex pick.
And Poppy has been one of Pure's most played supports in solo queue, but that's not going to be it. It will be a Bard and a Lux blind pick in the mid lane. I did not expect to see Lux blind, but maybe they got the assumption it'll be that Lulu. So coming in, they revealed their hand early, and now Jin Air has some decisions to make about their jungler. You can still jungle Mundo though, so that's not a guarantee.
They have so much flex choice. They have Lulu as a flexible top mid laner. They've got Mundo who can flex into the jungle. They have so many options that picking Lux blind, I saw how hard it was for you to force those words out of your mouth the moment you were like, Lux blind picks, because that's something you never see.
And it may be a mistake right here when that Mundo still can be jungled at the present time. So it could still be the Lulu top, Mundo jungle, and then something else in the mid lane, which you'd think would be the way they would want to go, considering how this draft is shaken out. Very tricky draft from Jin Air. They disguise their choice as well.
A lot of strong lane matchups against Lux. That's why you can afford to take some semblance of an assassin, just something more aggressive. It looks like LeBlanc will be the choice, another good choice. Now, this was the matchup that, of course, just yesterday was opted into by Fly, who opted into the Lux versus LeBlanc matchup with a last pick Lux. In this case, it's a very swingy matchup. It's a snowball matchup. Look for specifically Chaser to get the advantage, just because Chaser's going to have a lot easier time impacting mid lane than Dr. Mundo is.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to see the LeBlanc opt in after the trouble that Mickey had in that matchup just yesterday. And the fact that we've seen, I mean, you were talking earlier about Dade playing in China in that matchup, and it was intentionally selected.
Absolutely. Pawn, his counter pick against, of course, his old Samsung teammate in Dade was the Lux, and put the star points on, did a little bit of jumping around in the mid lane, some dancing after deaths. He was definitely being a bit cocky in the matchup, but he made it work, and now with the changes in the meta, feels like Lux is only a better selection against LeBlanc.
And a big part of that is the dominance of Thunderlord, because essentially you have a guaranteed Thunderlord proc if you hit your Q, because you Q auto passive proc, and then that means the Thunderlord's coming for the big trade.
So wait, burst champions burst harder is what you're telling me.
Shocking, I know.
Well, that's exactly which one's a good laning tool as well. That's this biggest strength as we're loading into our first game. Expression on a tank, that makes sense, but Tahm Kench top, we saw Duke really pull it off. Of course, double globals also available with the summoner spell and the ultimate.
And we do have a lot of long-range backline damage with the Lux Misfortune combo. Certainly be played out well by Longzhu in some of these team fights. Let's get into game one, Longzhu versus Jin Air. All right, game one, and day number 2 here of Champions Korea. Spring, our first round robin, and Longzhu's much-awaited debut.
Isn't it fun, though, that the last time we saw what was then Incredible Miracle playing in Champion Summer, it was Frozen playing Lux. And now we start Champion Spring. It's a different Longzhu mid laner, but still playing Lux.
That's right, and we do have a bit of a mix-up. Yesterday, we saw the Lux starting with a Doran's Ring, this time Corrupting Potion, chosen by Coco, and Doran's Ring start from Kuzan, so a bit of a reversal. And we'll see how this matchup plays up in the second day that we've seen it, and it's been opted into both ways. So it looks like players having a bit different opinions on which is the more favorable side of this particular matchup.
Just how this particular two teams come together in the late game is super interesting, because you look down Longzhu's lineup, they're all about the sieging. They've got Lux and Misfortune who can put out zones under turrets, try to take those turrets down, potentially have Bard for disengage. You have Tahm Kench to stand at the front and distract. But in the late game, you're going to have Dr. Mundo potentially with multiple items running at you with the Whimsy to break up any sort of siege. So it feels like Jin Air, look, they do have this weird early game power spike mid laner and late game power spike jungler, but if they can get Dr. Mundo time, it can be hard to siege against a Mundo that's never going to stop running in.
Yeah, definitely very difficult. They have good engage and they have great protection. A lot of the late game for Jin Air will be built around Pilot, and we do have a called lane swap. We also have the Bard ultimate, which can set up a bullet time final spark combo if used properly, so keep your eyes out for Pure, and there's some nice early trade damage.
Pure on this Bard. Bard is one of the strongest champions with Thunderlords just because his auto attack and the meat nature procs it. So at level 1, if Bard walks up and auto attacks you, you're taking in the realm of 200 damage with just a Q and auto attack.
Yeah, very strong. We start to see that more and more. Definitely why Bard is considered one of the top tier supports at the present point in time. And this is a very big bully lane right now. The power of 524 Misfortune, you are taking a lot of damage from auto trades.
Double Thunderlords action in full display there. We don't have the keystones on the screen yet, but that's definitely what's been selected by both Misfortune and Bard.
And we have, looks like going to be a passive lane. Chaser looking for an early gank, going to get behind Trace early on, force a flash, and there's the knock-up, gets the eat. And that is Trace in the belly, and Trace is definitely dead. And they're trying to hand this one over to Expression. Not quite getting that last auto attack, and that means that Chaser is going to have to come in for the first blood. So playing forward, and Chaser with a nice gank in the lane swap situation.
One of the words around the scene was that the synergy between Expression and Chaser was actually better than expected. It might be one of the reasons why they've elected to start Expression in this particular game. Everyone was waiting for Flame. We might have to wait a little bit longer.
Well, again, it's all about that synergy for Longzhu. With so many high caliber players on their team, they have to find something that works for them and not drop too many games while they all get on the same page.
And that's the thing, with so many moving pieces, when your whole lineup has basically been wholesale changed, if you have something that's working in scrims, like for example Expression and Chaser on the same page, maybe you won't mature into this lineup later in the season, but go for the low-risk approach where you are afforded to, and then later in the season build that synergy in a scrim environment.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially when there are so many expectations on you. Sure, we have a lot of games here in Korea, and there is room for attempting to build that synergy in professional matches, but maybe you decide to do that against perhaps a less intimidating opponent than Jin Air. Not that Jin Air is expected to be a playoff caliber team, but perhaps you save that for EM Fire or some teams that look like more bottom of the table squads.
Absolutely, and honestly it's a great thing for the Longzhu fans because IAM's always had a great and vocal fan base, and now suddenly they find themselves in this very weird scenario where they go from perennial low-tier team to expected to at minimum make playoffs this season.
See Trace here starting to get a big CS advantage, coming in with a range on that Lulu, so nice harassment.
It's 2 levels ahead.
Yeah.
Despite dying.
Yeah, very far ahead, so good zoning at the start of this game, and it's going to be tough for Tahm Kench. And I'm actually a bit surprised. Trace is a player who very rarely dies in lane, known for his conservative playstyle, hugging the turret, sacrificing CS to avoid giving up kills and play very defensively. But instead gives up first blood, not too common from this particular player.
You can see that it was all about trying to create pressure in the bottom, and that's why he had that experience advantage, but gave in for it. And maybe that's, you know, one of his off-season tasks was to increase his lane pressure, because so consistently last season we saw players pick scaling matchups into Trace, knowing that he wouldn't be the sort of player to pressure you even if he was in a counter matchup where he had the advantage.
Yeah. So Coco there, falling back, just waiting for the wave to come to him. Chaser is going to find Wing, both level 5. He's going to run into Chaser right now, get a little bit of a knock-up, and Chaser with a nice drop right there deals a lot of damage to Wing and starts getting some counter-jungling done. Does proc his Raptor buff as he drops that ward, finds a pink ward in that brush, but effectively wastes the Raptor. Nice reflexes from Kuzan as he comes in and distorts upon seeing the binding. And Coco now sitting underneath this turret. We'll just clear that with an E.
Chaser just saunter around the mid lane. You know, the difficult matchups, especially in the early levels, going to struggle against Lulu's sweet harassment. As Che looks for a bit of engage, means that we expect a CS advantage, but the CS advantage has been completely taken away.
Yeah, Pilot doing some work here, retreating. And And Che continuing to take that big Bard harassment in lane.
When it comes to laning matchups, Lulu advantage over Tahm-Kench, Misfortune advantage over Tristana. Right now, it's a line ball on both those lanes.
So Expression actually making a big comeback based on CS from that early disadvantage. Starting to make it work for him. Has hit level 6, and so many globals here from Longzhu, the Rek'Sai, and of course 2 coming through from the Tahm-Kench. So a lot of map mobility, and that means that Jin Air is going to have to play very cautiously in the late game when it comes to contesting some of these objectives.
Tough ask for such a new lineup to coordinate. Just think of the untapped potential of this Longzhu lineup when it comes to turret dives, with Tahm-Kench showing up, with the Bard ultimate disabling turrets. The skill ceiling of this team comp is immensely high. So for a new lineup to play this in their first ask in Champions, they're taking on a lot of risk and expectation just out of the gate.
Yeah. And similar itemization in our mid lane matchup to what we saw yesterday, just rushing through to the Frost Queen's Claim. That very potent item, or it's going to receive some nerfs, looks like, in the next couple of patches. Not only 6-1, but further damage done to that. Thankfully, I'm a bit sick of it already. One day of competition, Bob, with you. I already don't like Frost Queen's Claim.
It's one of those items that really pushes certain strategies in and out of the meta, and it's not being adjusted to the point where it won't be used. Both of the changes have been on the kind of more steady-handed approach, which is puzzling to me because Riot took so much time to remove vision from the game, and yet it will still act as effectively every 1 minute checking where the jungler's positioning is, or if you're susceptible at all in the mid lane. And given this is the pro level where you're going to have so much more complete information, the time when you actually use it will be dictated by what information you have from wards and from your teammates communicating to you, so you should be pretty safe with Frost Queen's Claim still in the meta.
Yeah, I think at this point too, it's just about buffing up items that have fallen out of favor. I mean, we don't see that much Athenes anymore.
No, not
you
at
have
all.
You have to make some changes to those items to make Frost Queen's Claim come at a little bit higher price for the vision that it gives you. Have some different itemization paths available. Bard now looking here in the mid lane. Kuzan has picked up his blue buff and will be continuing to trade with Coco, courtesy of a Thunderlord's proc. Pure is wandering his way through the jungle, trying to clear out some wards. He has to be careful.
He is Bard though, so terrain is always to his advantage. Very hard to lock down Bard even when he's in the enemy jungle. And just coming back to the itemization, it's a lot of indirect nerfs also. Athenes is objectively a weaker item. Morellonomicon, one of the biggest pluses of the item was Grievous Wounds, and of course that was changed during the offseason as well to only be selfish spells and selfish regeneration. So, and the introduction of CDR boots mean that CDR cap was achieved in different ways. Just lots of side changes have really pushed Frost Queen's Claim to the fore of AP itemization.
Absolutely, and speaking of boots, once again the swiftness craze is continuing on both top laners. Interestingly, look at the warding right now. Expression actually has a couple of very defensive pink wards at the moment, so just trying to play very far back and as defensively as he can, not really worried, of course, about Mundo ganks when it's a Mundo that doesn't have Chilling Smite, has opted for the Tracker's Knife instead. So primarily looking just to provide vision and farm, and the emphasis now, deep wards in the top side, so they want to start pushing with the Bard MF combo and making some plays on that side of the map.
Coco trying to go back, but Spooky Ghost spot him out. Another one of the reasons why Swifties is good is, of course, with the prevalence of slows both from champions like Trundle and the aforementioned Frost Queen's Claim. Slow resistance or slow reduction is actually very relevant in this meta.
Certainly is. Coco still not having a chance to go back. Will use his ultimate to clear that wave and play some nice dancing, spinning music for himself, I guess.
So we were promised shorter game times, Monte Cristo, and I watched that series yesterday, KT vs Freaka. Didn't find any shorter game times there.
Did you watch the first one, Papa
I did. But, and this series also looking like a longer one, 11 minutes, not much action to it. A lot of wave clear wars going on at this point. I agree with the Dragon deprioritization, but I think we will still have some trademark Champions games that push the 40-minute back.
Yeah, well, I think given the sheer volume of games that we have, that'll probably be true, but I think as players get more accustomed to the 2016 meta, we may see some differences there, but it's still very early in this season. Sebastian still taking quite a bit of harassment here, and Wing trying to control the crab at the bottom of the map.
That's why it's so hard to predict the meta and what's going to be good, what's going to be contested. You know, we've talked about champions like Mundo that we're finally seeing today that was completely absent 2 days ago. Ezreal hasn't been picked or banned despite being Blue Ezreal being a phenom in other scenes. So, and often you ask these players why they don't play it, and it's just they haven't thought about it or they haven't considered it.
Dive coming in. He is very low right now. Is going to tag Wing with his tongue, but an early use of the wild growth. Expression trying to flash this one. He is not going to live through this. Trace picks up a kill, so Trace gets his revenge in the bottom lane. Expression sticking around at a nice dive. There's a lot of vision down there to prevent that from happening, but Wing just finds a way through, and he's tanky enough to deal with it. Longzhu is going to respond on the top side by putting a lot of pressure down onto the turret. Meanwhile, Wing, the one left auto-attacking, while Trace zips his way into the top to provide some necessary wave clear and keep this tower upright. Expression does have his TP. He decides to use it. That tower is very low, but they don't know where Trace is right now. They will shortly.
Smart rotation from Longzhu pushing this now. Usually you'd think LeBlanc would be so much faster at rotating to top lane compared to Lux, a very slow immobile mage, but they have excellent ward, both pink and green ward control over the top side of the map. It was actually a fairly safe push, despite the fact that overall they ended up losing a turret for it.
Yeah, they did end up losing a turret. No trade there whatsoever. So Expression decides not to use his TP. It was actually quite tricky by Trace to immediately recall and then try and head into the top side. That means that Tristana will be moving down here to catch the wave that Expression pushes forward. We will have our duo lanes now heading back into the bottom. And Jin Air looking at a dragon right now. They do have it pink warded, no vision, so it should be pretty easy for Winged and Che to burn through. Will be the first dragon of the game going over to Jin Air. He's playing a much cleaner game than we saw at IEM San Jose.
Just talking about how IM or Longzhu had invested in the top side of the map. Jin Air had done that on the bottom. That's why Dragon was such an easy objective for them to pull off. They rotated first, and yeah, smart of them to pick up that objective.
Minor gold lead here for Jin Air, coming off the farm and the faster turret kill. And now that Trace is in that top side, they have problems actually finishing off that turret.
No way for Tahm Kench to pressure a Lulu, as by far the inferior wave clear in general will just take ranged auto attacks the whole laning phase. So yeah, it's going to be structure gold lead, and structure gold is so important in the new meta. As Chaser takes a bit of a poke of damage. It's all about the global gold that structures now afford. It feels like one of the biggest proponents of the theoretical fast snowball that we'll see as this meta develops.
Miss Bartle right there.
Is that global gold from the turrets. So big advantage to people like Che, who have access to items just that much earlier than Pure does.
Yeah, and Trace too goes for the Frost Queen's Flame first. You can see him popping it pretty much every time it's up. He's constantly going to be using that to harass Expression and to check for the enemy jungler. So he has a lot of tools. Meanwhile, Longzhu has lost control over that topside jungle with the swap. Chaser now trying to set up once again. They really need to make this push work, especially with the long lane. Huge numbers of Longzhu wards on the bottom side of the map. Pure and Chaser coordinating well.
It's insane that they could put out this much vision on this
actually
patch.
Nuts. I'm very impressed.
A lot of that will, of course, be blue wards, the spot wards coming through rather than permanent vision like before, but still, it's an impressive litany of wards on the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, playing around this Misfortune very well, and they want to try and equalize these towers. So we don't see the pink ward protection that we saw earlier for Expression on this Tahm Kench. But yeah, massive vision advantage right now to Longzhu, just better coordination. Kuzan is going to be continuing to do damage though to Coco. Things have been relatively even. Do you like spooky ghosts, Papa Smithy?
I mean, I'm going to learn to love them, I think. It's not much of a choice. It's going to be around for at least the next couple of months, it looks like.
I don't like spooky ghosts.
No,
I'm not a horror movie fan, you know?
That's fair. Well, it's a bit of a horror story for you then in the first part of the season.
I find horror movies just ridiculous. Like, sometimes horror movie fans try and convince me to watch horror movies with them, and I just think they're hilarious, and all the people are stupid.
Well, I mean, you have to suspend your disbelief with some things. I watch wrestling. It's the same story there, so I understand their pain of trying to convince you of some of the finer arts of horror movies. Longzhu have to use this vision. One thing I wanted to mention is power of vision is what it grants you, the extra knowledge to be able to make smarter rotations. So it doesn't really matter how many wards you have down if you're just having farm wars or ARAMs in the middle. That's all it's been so far, so Longzhu really need to capitalize on this vision advantage, and they're letting some of it be swept out.
They're not pushing up into that mid turret. They did try and get everybody into that mid lane to take it out after the wave was pushed in the bottom side. Kuzan going to take a big hit from the final spark, but no one dies. That's what I'm learning about this Lux LeBlanc matchup, Papa Smithy.
You're right. The one time we did see a kill from a Lux burst, it was the culling coming through from Lucian to actually finish off the kill.
It's okay. It'll be bullet time this game. You ready?
I'm ready for the first bullet time. We haven't seen one 17 minutes in. We might see a level 2 bullet time before it's first used.
Final bullet time. The combo. The new combo.
That is AoE damage over time versus instant damage, but if some Bard shenanigans come through, just think about the size of Bard's ult. That's about the same size as Make It Rain, 60% slow. We could see some Wombo to rival the Curse of the Sad bullet time days.
I would love to see that if Longzhu actually is capable of putting together such a feat. Can be difficult, but I mean, you have the Lucent Singularity slow too from Lux, so a lot of AoE crowd control, able to set up a big bolt combo.
I think we need to throw out what we know about Trace out the window. He has a Magi's completed in the inventory.
It's a brand new Trace, apparently.
A brand new Trace. It's his theaters near you. Right now, I guess on your screen. Magi's has seen a change, does go up to 25 stacks now. Does have the Dark Seal that it builds out of and gives you slightly more regen from potions, I believe, when it's in the Dark Seal form and when it's finished in Magi's. But no stacks on it, and just, I mean, we only usually see Magi's from Faker when he's way ahead against one of the lower teams. So
or from Janna players.
That's true.
Still a popular Janna choice.
Now I miss Mata.
Now you miss Mata and his Magi's Janna.
Majestic Magi's Janna. Say that 3 times fast.
No, we're not playing that game.
We're playing League of Legends. Well, sort of. There's not really much happening at the moment.
Playing Farm Wars.
Farm Wars. Farmville.
So interesting. Morello, Namicon, Coco coming second. So same build that we saw yesterday on this Lux. But Kuzan actually opting for a very fast Sonya's Hourglass. But that's going to be quite useful against Captain Jack later on. So I think if there are team fights early, that's going to prove very beneficial to avoiding the burst. Chaser now taking a couple of taps from the chains and winged in the mid lane, trying to clear out a pink ward. But there come the ghosts with a nice slow.
And we should talk about what the ghosts are doing in these scenarios, is that with incomplete vision, popping the ghost gives you that extra little bit of information. So getting a pick seems pretty damn hard when you've got spooky ghosts aplenty.
There we go. Che actually going to come through with a big pulverize. Uses that ultimate, going to knock Chaser back into the turret right now, but there's just no follow-up. Kuzan chunked down. Jack will take a hit in the combo from LeBlanc and get hit down to about 50% himself. Meanwhile, Trace chased out of the top lane by this Tahm Kench, who's trying desperately to push this wave and finish off this tower, which is still pretty low HP. But Trace there with too many Glitter Lances.
All of the Glitter Lances adorably coming through from the pool party Lulu. Expression doesn't seem to care though. Doesn't really take any damage already. He's got the Spirit Visage, so that makes sense.
No problem. Second Dragon of the game, and we talked about the lower priority on Dragon, but it certainly didn't seem to matter yesterday in the KT matches when they got 5 Dragon stacks in both of their games.
Captain Jack might be caught.
Yeah, he is very far forward, going to dodge a cleaver. There's the Make It Rain, but he gets knocked into the wall. There's the rocket jump from Pilot, and the finisher, Kuzan, now trying to lock down Pure, and Pure will just explode. Kuzan on the roam. They catch the duo of Jin Air in the long lane, and that's all she wrote. Coco wants to get this turret, but Trace is there. He's been playing minion wave defense all game, and he finds another one to just barely keep his turret alive.
And importantly, we saw the difference between Jin Air and Longzhu in terms of using vision. This whole time, Longzhu has had a stranglehold over blue side Jin Air's jungle, did nothing with that information. Jin Air made a couple of visits to the red side jungle. His Trace is caught, but his Lulu, so probably be fine. and then capitalized on it, made a great rotation, got 2 kills, and just really smart play around their vision by Jin Air that Longzhu wasn't able to put together.
Yeah, they did have to sacrifice that top turret to make it work. So 2 kills for that 1 turret because of the teleport into the mid lane. So we're still riding at about the same gold differential in the end, but kills onto this LeBlanc and this Tristana, not exactly what you want if you're Longzhu early on. Big high damage carries here in the mid game.
Let's return to Lux for a little bit. Lux and LeBlanc, both great burst champions, of course very different. Assassin versus more of a control mage in Lux is Che.
Get ambushed here, but does have the unbreakable will. They're going to chase after him, but not enough to burst through that ultimate. And just going to clear out the pink ward that was dropped. Instead, Pure still taking a huge amount of damage from the Thunderlords, from the LeBlanc.
Sebastian has teleport, but isn't electing to use it just yet. Could ult in as well.
That is one of the issues with Bard that we've seen in a meta where burst mages are a priority. If you want to build a quick Frost Queen's Claim, which is not actually what he's going for, in fact, is building up into an Aegis a little bit faster. I think that's probably going to be wise at this stage of the game.
Saw Bards being bullied out a couple of days ago if they tried to rush for the Glass Cannon build, trying to get the GP10 and slows on with the Spooky Ghosts. There's one thing I wanted to mention. Lifesteal's really hard to itemize right now. We're seeing lifesteal 3rd, 4th, 5th for AD carries. It's going to take a lot of damage.
Yeah, Winged is going to take damage. It has his ultimate. Kuzan comes in for a distortion. There's a nice Bard ult. It's going to cause a little bit of a delay, but everyone pops out. 2 flashes used right afterwards, so the follow-up just not there from Longzhu. They continue to use that Make It Rain, but once again, they are repulsed from the mid lane turret. They still haven't been able to actually get that objective yet. And now the tide is turning here. A lot of HP still on the members of Jin Air, and they want to move forward and finish this off. Pure takes another big hit. And the mid lane, massive grouping that we've seen pretty much in all 4 games so far of Champions is going to happen again.
Let's turn into these pseudo ARAM wars where both teams are trying to protect the mid turret, which of course has been always the most important outer turret to take down because there's so much extra information about your enemy's movements. But with lifesteal being so hard to get, you poke someone out 70% health, they can't walk into, say, the Raptors or to one of their other buffs or just heal quickly off minions just because we're just really not seeing lifesteal picked up at all. So that's why LeBlanc and Lux, for different reasons, both of them burst hard. Both of them very relevant in this meta.
Yeah, if you can hit one of those AD carries, it really does change the nature of the fight. Pilot here, now on the top side to pick up some of that farm next to his tier 2. It's time for another Longzhu push. They almost have this turret down, but guess what? Trace is back yet again. Some more Glitter Lance clear. It's not going to be enough this time, as we do see the Spooky Ghost, and now we see Jay caught up, does use his ultimate, and gets in with a big pulverized 3-man. Now Captain Jack on the outside. Kuzan nearly bursts him down. Pilot now right in the mix, has to flash over the wall. Coco low alongside Captain Jack. Jin Air wants to continue this fight. Pilot still moving. There's a comeback. Great ultimate from Misfortune to turn the fight around. Captain Jack baits him into a choke and then manages to pick up a kill. Now Longzhu still pursuing Trace, but Trace gets out with the Whimsy, and Kuzan almost did enough, but it just wasn't quite there, and Captain Jack with the bullet time makes the big play.
I mean, the big play actually though was by the least hyped member of this Longzhu side. Pure's Bard ultimate was incredible for disengage. Between Tahm Kench and the time it bought Captain Jack, that Bard ultimate allowed Misfortune to finally get back far enough to be able to channel the bullet time in a safe spot, despite being at, what, 300-400 health. When we see the replay, watch for the Bard ultimate, because that's what won the fight.
Chaser, a little bit of mission for Vision, and does have to get out with his very low HP. Mass recall now coming through for Longzhu. And he took the 2 mid lane turrets, not only getting that one they had tried for so long. Trace now wants to steal away. He's going to find Chaser here. Chaser going to get low, does have to use the Chilling Smite, and it's just not going to be enough.
No Magi stats from that, but they do get the turret in mid.
Oh, Che, goodbye.
Exploded.
Must be humiliated to be killed by a giant pink beam.
That's true.
I think that's how you're going to die, Papa Smithy.
A giant pink beam? Probably. I've tried to avoid them this long, but they'll get me eventually.
Giant pink space laser.
Coco continuing the proud tradition of Longzhu Lux.
It's true. I'm sure you got some nice tips from Frozen. Pilot now coming back alongside this Lulu, quickly taking out the turret with the explosive charge.
I like Jin Air rotating around the Tahm Kench. If Tahm Kench is ever alone in the lane, the wave clear disadvantage you will have against whichever pairing you throw from Jin Air, they can capitalize on this vision. Justana will just explode turrets, and there's nothing Expression can do.
Yeah, do trade 1-for-1 in the end. That low HP turret in the bottom lane does go down to Captain Jack, so we're looking at a very even game, less than 1K difference right now, but the Dragon stacks may be the story. Jin Air up 2-0, and we have a live Dragon right at the moment. Better vision certainly for Longzhu, but they are not in position right now to really defend around this objective. Jin Air rushes all the way from that top lane with 3 members.
This is again on the globals from Longzhu. All flashes are down, so if they catch someone with the Bard ultimate, can get a good positioning on the Make It Rain, and specifically the bullet time, there is definitely a one-team fight in the wings for Longzhu.
I know. Their flashes are going to be coming up soon, though. A couple of them on Kuzan and Wings, so they may just try and hold out just long enough to make that work.
Watching Longzhu just push up the mid. Don't want to give away any free structures, get as many waves pushing as possible to give them the permanent vision that's no longer easily picked up by green wards. Just trying to get position, because it's very hard to walk through a choke when Misfortune on the enemy team.
Longzhu is going to take that Dragon pretty easily. Winged actually going to come in. He gets the spike steal. That's stack number 3. Kuzan comes over the wall and gets out. Very nice steal there from Winged. Just uses the move speed buff from his ultimate to walk by, drive by on the Dragon. Chaser not fast enough on the smite.
And that's such an important steal, because we were just talking about the fact that this was the one of the few times in the game where Jin Air didn't want to opt into a team fight because they didn't have their flashes. The next time that an objective comes up, they'll have their flashes, and it'll be that much harder for Longzhu to win it.
Wow. All right. To see a check on the Baron right there from Lux's ultimate. They don't have any other vision in the pit right now for Longzhu, and that was a very fun steal from Winged against his former teammate of Chaser, so getting his head, I'm sure, a little bit right there. Chaser, what's interesting about this new Longzhu team is they are known, some of their players like Coco and Chaser are known to be very emotional players.
You're going to see the replay. Just watch Wing pops the ultimate, slowed by the Spooky Ghost, doesn't even notice it, casually walks away. Such as Mundo. Steals when he pleases.
Definitely does.
Yeah, the meta layer of it being Winged, stealing it from previous all-star hype jungler Chaser, all the sweeter.
Yeah. Now, Kuzan now just back in that top lane, and you have a big push coming in as Longzhu heads up mid. No turrets to get. Side tier 2 still available, and Winged will get tied up here, and here comes Bard. Winged going to have to pop his flashes to get out of that. Will get hit by the Bard ultimate. Will there be enough follow-up? And there will be nice binding at the end of the Bard ultimate. We're going to go ahead and eat this Mundo, shove him over the wall. Remember, oh!
Not quite the width on that one, and remember, this is Dr. Mundo with Spirit Visage. The burst damage, he laughs it off. Actually was regenerating health in stasis, so that's an interesting interaction, but...
that was a mistake there. Couldn't quite get Winged over the wall where they could have had enough time to actually finish off that kill, and instead he remains with over half HP right now. Pilot here, so a couple taps here onto Captain Jack.
Potential flank coming through from Kuzan, has to get rid of some spot vision.
Yeah, have to be very careful about that. Oh, Pilot is going to get annihilated by the bullet time final spark combo. There it is, they get the catch with the Lux Q and finish off the kill. Pilot playing in front of his tanks, and that's a big mistake when it comes to defending this turret. They still have the Lulu for some more wave clear. It looks like this turret may go down on the next wave. Kuzan wants to make a play, but everyone's stacking on top of Captain Jack right now, and they're going to have to give up yet another turret.
Feels like Pilot was positioned where Trace should be. He's the one that has the more reliable ranged wave clear. Instead, Pilot walked up and was punished for trying to wave clear himself. This is what happens when you have LeBlanc, a champion in the mid lane, who doesn't offer that much reliable wave clear. You needed Trace to pick up the slack, and he didn't do it.
So we do see a long magical journey. At the end of the tunnel will be a lot of people heading back to base. So Winged here trying to pull away from this red buff, hand it over to Pilot as he respawns.
And we should return to one of the most interesting purchases of this game. That's the Medjais from Trace. At the moment, 0 stacks, none whatsoever. And you think about what the flow-on effect is of picking up a Medjais. I can tell you, just from playing solo queue, you pick up a Medjais, suddenly you're that much more afraid of dying. Of course, in this case, shouldn't be, doesn't have any stacks. But it's interesting that the player that has the reliable wave clear, that probably does have to get into the riskier spots, has gone for a snowball item that makes you want to position more conservatively.
Yeah, definitely a factor that enters your mind with that Medjais item, and something that can affect your play, to be sure. A little bit surprised we haven't just seen him sell it yet. Try and go for something that might be a little bit more reliable, but having a lot of faith in that particular purchase. And now Winged going to get licked a little bit. I don't know about licking Mundo.
No, doesn't look particularly appetizing. They did spot that Coco was out of position. That's why they tried to push and get a couple of auto attacks in with Tristana. So rotating around Coco is an ideal, but how often this game, barring when he's picking up blue buff, will Coco be away from his structures?
Yeah. Probably not a whole lot.
No, even with Death Cap especially, minion wave deletion is on the menu from Coco.
Possibly player deletion too. We can see that combo erupt once again from Jack and Coco.
Look at this Tristana build. This is not something that we've seen.
Very weird. Phantom Dancer, not an item that we have seen yet really utilized by many AD carries.
The Infinity Edge into the rapid fire count, that's definitely standing, especially on 524 before there's a couple of tweaks between the Zeal items. Phantom Dancer you just don't really see at all. And you wonder what exactly contributes here, just because I guess you're taking 10% less damage from Tahm Kench in your face that you're auto-attacking, because otherwise you're not taking any reduced damage from a burst mage, from either, honestly, the burst of Captain Jack or from Coco, just because you won't be getting an auto attack in to get that 10% reduced damage from the Phantom Dancer passive.
Oh, Pilot, and Pilot gonna live thanks to a timely wild growth as they try and get a long-range catch with the ult combo over the wall.
Looked like there was a cleanse effect of some sort. That might be the Mikhails. We don't have the items on the screen right now, but just lives, as you mentioned. But the cooldown for those picks is very short. The moment that a Q hits from Lux, the follow-up damage is certainly there from Longzhu.
The answer is Pilot has a QSS, so probably a smart grab at this point in the game to get out of those situations that he might find himself in, avoiding any further deaths like he had at his Tier 2. In the top side, Dragon is live once again, and this is going to be the focus of this game, it would seem. Winged wants to go for yet another steal. Jin Air here, and they know there aren't ultimates. Longzhu not in the greatest position right now to actually play around this. They don't have MF available, and we see it again. No, Chaser gets it this time, but Chase going to engage with a Pulverize. Captain Jack killed nearly instantly, and we have, looks like Pilot actually not going to be able to get into this fight in the end. Jin Air still trying to pursue. Captain Jack still low. Winged with absolutely no damage onto him so far. Kuzan skirting the outside. Pilot wants to get in, and he's going to just get some autos in onto the tanks, but not a lot else as he is focused down. And Expression looks like he is just simply not going to make it. And there's no light at the end of that tunnel for him.
But it was still a bit of daylight robbery from Longzhu, because that whole fight they were kiting back towards Jin Air's base. They were lucky that they bought enough time for Bard to pick up the cooldown on Magical Journey. But regardless, only losing one and picking up the all-important first dragon is actually a pretty decent trade for Longzhu, assuming they don't give up Baron.
Yeah, that's going to be the kicker here. Expression has 36 seconds. He does have TP up, but there is going to have to be some sort of Baron play.
Coco has his ultimate again.
Yeah, Rek'Sai ultimate is going to make this a little more challenging to take. They need to force a fight at the very least, but Jin Air simply going to retreat. Jack not dying in that fight again. Absolutely huge for Longzhu. Had Jack gone down too, would have been a pretty easy cleanup on that particular team fight, and then a Baron right afterwards for Jin Air.
It crucially had both the Locket shield and the Lux shield, and then got ate by the Tahm Kench, so just had just enough. He was literally on a sliver of health without dying, but that bought him enough time to open space. He could theoretically have channeled the bullet time if the fight had elongated, but Magical Journey came up again. They got out of the fight almost scot-free, and Tahm Kench really stacking the health, looking pretty damn tanky.
Yeah, same thing with this Mundo, though. And with a lot of burst damage from Longzhu, they may not actually be able to take him down. You can see he's up above 4k HP already, 4,300. Doing a lot of healing from that ultimate as well. 2 stacks now, good thing on the Magi's.
Getting closer and closer to that cost efficiency. That's what I like to see.
Do you enjoy cost efficiency, Papa Smithy?
I do, but definitely a big offender right now, this Magi. It's been a bit of a head scratch. What did Trace expect this game to go that Magi seemed like the right buy? Just because it was very clear from the first 15 to 20 minutes that there wasn't going to be a lot of fight in this game. It's been mostly passive. You're seeing a lot of scrimmage, if you're seeing a lot of 2v2s, 3v3s, I don't mind the Magi's. Lulu's one of the best champions at picking up latent stacks next to like Ajana, as we mentioned earlier, but this hasn't been that kind of game.
Certainly has not as of yet. Jin continuing to make some headway into the vision around the Baron. All the wards from Longzhu on the defensive side right now, and it's like Longzhu doesn't want to overextend, make any more mistakes, even after they did stall out this game by picking up that dragon, a very important objective for them to grab early. And we're looking at pretty much dead even gold, a 300 gold difference in this game.
At 38 minutes, Monty, where we would expect games to be finishing, what, around the 28 to 30 minute mark on average, especially with the measures Riot's taking to try and speed up the game. So far, not on display this game.
Well, you know, Papa Smithy, every time Riot tries to speed up the game, the Koreans will just slow it down, make it about objectives and low-risk play. Don't you just love it?
But those objectives were supposed to be turrets, not dragons.
Ruining the meta again. Thanks, Korean team.
Thanks, Korea. What's Korea done for League of Legends lately anyway?
Yeah, they didn't even win IEM San Jose.
I know, I was there. Actually, you were there, sorry. I did see them win another tournament.
You did? You were there for IEM Cologne.
I miss Ever when I watch games like this one, Krista. Why Jin and EM Fire if not Ever?
Chaser is going to take a little bit of damage here from the explosive charge, but he's getting damn tanky himself. And now Jin going to find an opening here, but Pilot used his explosive charge, so he's actually not going to be able to do as much damage to that turret as he could have. Minute 30 until the next dragon. Oh, Kuzan caught out. Oh, nope.
Not quite the burst damage coming. There's actually a 2-turret advantage in the bottom lane, so this is one of the few times actually we've seen in competitive games that the minion waves are actually pushing stronger on the Longzhu side compared to others, as Winged.
Gonna get caught out, but he's still so tanky, and he's gonna get eaten and has to flash over the wall. Che will take the Bard ultimate, but that's not the greatest, considering he doesn't have to even use his ults.
Can we just be
to
clear
retreat.
that Mundo just tanked 5 people's damage?
This is why I'm surprised we haven't seen more Mundo, Papa Smithy.
He's full health, by the way, in case you wondered.
Yeah, you know, back to full health, why not?
He's gonna back for some reason. I guess he wants to buy another Giant's belt.
Clearly needs more HP. Has the randoms. Nope, he is actually going to be building Thornmail.
In my head, the first thing I thought of was Guardian Angel, which would be even more troll, but it is going to be a Thornmail.
It's definitely going to be a Thornmail. We have the Wild Growth, a lot of shields too for the Mundo, fortunately.
This is the sort of game where, after it's done, whatever the result, I actually want to compare damage dealt to a between a free farm top lane Tahm Kench and the Mundo, just because I think it might be interesting. You definitely see a lot of damage coming out of Tahm Kench, but Mundo, the consistent damage, has always been there.
That's right, so Wing now. Scuttle grabbing his way to success. 10 seconds before this dragon's going to spawn, so a nice objective taken there. Trace on the run into the enemy jungle, actually. Expression going to try and track him down. Chaser and the rest of the crew now collapsing. Trace is going straight back into the enemy base, and this is going to be a TP. Nope, not out. Chaser is going to stop it, but guess what? Trace is giving the runaround to IM, or Longzhu rather, and now they're going to try and stop Chaser from ulting over to this Baron attempt that they're trying to take right now. It's getting low, about 4,000 HP. Che now going to be zoned out, has to use his ultimate. He's inside Expression, and Jin has to call it off. Nice Bard ultimate, though. That's going to be the laser. Can they finally kill Winged? They're going to get Che with a little bit of help from the Baron, but Winged remains alive for the moment. Somehow Trace got out of the base, and now Longzhu, it's their time to go after this Baron. Can they secure it? definitely a risky call from Jin Air.
Made a lot of sense, though, especially with Chaser following him around. They didn't have the damage to finish it. Longzhu trying to finish it themselves.
I don't know, Kuzan's going to try and get in there. Captain Jack takes a hit, but they're going to get the Baron, and that'll be Chaser securing the objective. No flash from this Mundo to try for another steal. Winged coming up short, and at 41 minutes, we have our first Baron of the game on Longzhu after a botched attempt from Jin Air.
I like what Jin Air tried, specifically with Chaser being the one that was actually chasing down the Lulu. I thought there might be time, but they just didn't have the damage to finish the Baron at 42 minutes. And they're going to take 2 objectives to punish them.
Yeah, nicely done. So not even a counter Dragon right there to put Jin Air on the doorstep to number 5. They simply stand around the Baron and watch as it dies. Coco clearing out a wave before recalling, and we do have a huge wave built up in the top side that will be taken out by Xpecion.
And this is where Jin Air's comp will definitely start to come apart at the seams. When Baron is picked up, suddenly Lulu's Glitter Lance isn't really a reliable way to clear waves. LeBlanc, double AP in general on a Mundo, the magic damage is going to struggle to clear waves, and this might finally be the base being broken by Longzhu. They must use this Baron to really open up a inhibitor advantage.
Yeah, Pilot too has to get those multiple auto attacks in to actually efficiently clear out the waves, and if he does that, he's going to be a sitting duck for the big damage coming through from Captain Jack and Coco. So smooth transition, Xpecion riding that wave with Coco all the way back into the top side for the final tier 2 turret possessed by the Jin Air Green Wings.
Jin Air were rotating around Xpecion's lack of wave clear. They were looking great. This game was so close, but one Baron force and suddenly base is broken.
There it is. First inhibitor turret goes down at the same time. Longzhu will not be stopping there. Continue their methodical push. Let's see what we can see. Pilot actually going to get hit and into a Bard ultimate. Here comes Chaser. Is there going to be enough follow-up? No, there's not. Wing going to go right into it. Kuzan takes a big chunk right away. Pilot here trying to get as much damage as he can, but he's going to barely miss the laser. Pilot going to knock Chaser right out of the fight and try and get back to Fountain. But the inhibitor is going to fall. They pick up a kill on Che in the midst of all that, and they're going to go for the win right now. Working on these turrets, Winged just absolutely unkillable. He's not going to die here either as he sprints back to Fountain, but that'll be Pilot falling to Captain Jack, and that's going to be the end of this game. Longzhu on a Baron push off of a mistake from Jin Air is going to take a very close game 1. GG.
To call this game methodical would be an understatement. You couldn't pick a victory or a winner 5-6 minutes ago, but putting all in on trying to just rush down that Baron while Longzhu were trying to chase down the Lulu. They got punished for it, the Baron was picked up, and the game ended soon after.
Well, that could be a bit of trouble, especially when Chaser does have that Rek'Sai ultimate to reposition on the map and try and make things work. So a little bit of an overinvestment there from Jin Air, but all in all, a much better performance from them, a much more measured and poised performance than we saw at IEM San Jose.
I mean, we were honestly considering Jin Air on a similar tier to EM Fire, who just from their lineup on paper, we're not expecting many things from. Jin Air looked organized, they played around Xpecion, they played around the lack of wave clear until the Baron buff. Double AP wave clear just couldn't do anything, and the push was good from Longzhu.
Yeah, longest game of the season so far, 44 minutes, only 12 kills. There's Lustboy coming back to coach Longzhu and his former teammates Flame and Captain Jack after his stint as a support player on TSM for the last over a year.
Year and a half there. Xpecion played fine, but will we actually see Flame in the booth for game 2 now that they've already got a victory?
That's going to be the question. Well, Jin Air, coach is there too, and they see if they can turn it around. They nearly had that one. Played their hearts out against Longzhu, and we'll see when we get into game 2 in just a few minutes.